Mr. Rainwater.
Hey, Jow.
Tonight, let's talk about our favorite contemporary artists.
All right.
We set this up, obviously, before we got into it. This is not one of our improv episodes.
So less improv episodes.
We
did 5 minutes of prep before we start recording.
Absolutely, and that means it's no longer improv. But we did talk about this a little bit before, and I mentioned to you when we discussed the topic of discussing current favorite artists that I wanted to do, at least for me, artists that don't get a lot of play in discussions. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? People that jump out to me, but aren't commonly talked about, just to kind of bring a little bit more awareness to their work. Now, I'm going to out myself right off the bat. Most of my guys are mainstream. Like, if you are in the general realm of that medium, you probably will know who I'm going to bring up. Sure. The people that you sent me, I've never even heard of, which is exciting.
I will say that the two comic artists, well, especially my first one that I listed, I'd say he's pretty well known at this point in terms of he did a lot of Marvel stuff, but we'll get into that. Anyway. Okay. What were you going to say, Jow?
I don't remember what I was going to say. Who wants to go first?
You go first.
Okay. My first is a feature filmmaker who's also a screenwriter. Only has 3 features to his name, but was nominated for an Oscar. I don't think he won, but he definitely was nominated. He was nominated for at least 2 of them, if not 3, all 3. I think. Okay. Don't hold me to that. Not that I put much stock in Oscars and this and that, but easily one of my favorite filmmakers, just from the first feature film that I saw of his. Absolutely loved, stuck with me. I watch it at least twice a year. Damien Chazelle, which, if you're listening and you're not familiar with his name, you probably are familiar with his works. He was the writer-director on the most known one is La La Land with Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. It was the musical set in Hollywood. Next, more known is Whiplash, which is the one with J.K. Simmons as like an overbearing music teacher at a very high, I don't want to call it high end, a high top tier music school. Okay. And lastly,
I've never heard of the movie Whiplash, so this is
oh my god.
Yeah.
There is no way you are not watching that movie before the next time we talk. I don't care what your schedule looks like. You haven't seen Whiplash?
This is the first I've heard about it. I hadn't even heard about this movie until now.
J.K. Simmons won an Oscar for his performance in this film.
What's just like a brief, not even a synopsis, just like a log line?
Oh boy, don't make me do it. I want to call him Andrew Garfield, but it's not. Miles Teller. Do you know who he is? He's an actor.
No, I don't.
Okay. He is a drummer, and he wants to get into this very big jazz band school. And J.K. Simmons is the instructor at the I believe it's a college. And he really wants to be like the best, like the absolute best. And J.K. Simmons is kind of known for, I don't know about making the best, but finding the best at the very least and coaching the best and this and that. And he gets a chance to go to this school and he gets to audition. And once he gets into the actual, the band, I guess you could call it, but it's like an ensemble. It's like, brass and all that kind of stuff. He very quickly learns that this man's standards are beyond the stratosphere. And he is uncompromised. J.K. Simmons' character is uncompromising in terms of you will do it perfect or you're gonna like die. He's like I don't want to call him a Nazi because that gets thrown around so much these days, but he is the utmost perfectionist in terms of his demands. And the crazy part about it is Miles Teller's character doesn't like regret that decision or anything like that. Like he jumps in head first and is like full on willing to do whatever it takes to meet this man's standards. And the entire movie kind of tracks their relationship as, and believe me or not, they're not like buddy. This is not a feel-good movie, I would not say. But it really is I don't want to call it a slice of life or a snapshot, but it's really great portrayal of hard work and coaching and elevators and students. And Paul Reiser plays Miles Teller's dad. Paul Reiser from like Mad About You. You know who he is. And like there's like
I haven't seen him in anything forever, so that's interesting. He doesn't
have a big role, but he's an essential part of it. But like there's like discussions at like the dinner table about like what greatness is, and like the sports family, like his cousin and stuff like that, is trying to put down about like, oh, nobody cares about this jazz player or blah 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 blah. And Miles Teller turns back and goes, yeah, and you're going to be the guy who's like hanging on to his high school fame forever. And like, it's a really great examination of people who are constantly reaching for better. And it's a beautiful film. It looks so beautiful. And I don't hold me to this, but I'm pretty sure it was shot on film, even though it was a fairly recent film. The entire thing, Damien Chazelle has a thing for jazz music. There's no doubt in my mind.
Oh, right, because La La Land is also...
La La Land's also very jazzy. And he's also got a thing for Hollywood, too, because his next film, which I believe is called Babylon, is set in, like, the 1930s Hollywood. So there's many themes that keep popping up in his work. And then the other thing that he did was the First Man movie, with Ryan Gosling following Neil Armstrong, that got all that stupid political press about, oh, we don't show him put the flag on the moon and that's the most important thing. I didn't know. Did you see First Man by any chance?
I haven't. I heard somebody watching it one time and wondering what the fuck the movie was, and then I found out. I was like, I thought it was Jurassic Park based on like the sound mix.
If you ever like when you like remember, it's much more of like a 90s movie critic line, but you remember how they used to call it a white knuckle thrill ride?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you watch the first 5 minutes of First Man, and if you watch it the right way, like if you watch it on a fairly, like a really big screen, we're talking like 100-inch TV, and you do like surround sound and like the lights are off in the room and stuff like that. Like if you do it right, it is literally a white knuckle thrill ride. I'll just describe to you, because even describing it to you, it will not ruin the experience of it if you watch it. The first 5 minutes of First Man is Ryan Gosling in a plane, breaking through the atmosphere above Earth, going into space in a plane as Neil Armstrong, right?
Yeah.
And this is just like a test that they're doing to see like what happens and this and that. And he gets through the atmosphere, and he's like riding like right in like whatever range I guess is between atmosphere and like space, like however thin or thick it is, that's where he is. And in order to come back down, you have to go back through the atmosphere. But right. His plane, not a spaceship, plane, bounces on the atmosphere, and this is like a very grounded, realistic, like, and this was definitely this movie was shot on film. I believe it was actually shot on film that was like the same grade from like the 1940s or 50s or whenever it actually all happened. And it is very grounded. Like it feels like you're watching a movie, and It literally is a white knuckle thrill ride that first 5 minutes. Obviously, we all know in our heads Neil Armstrong lives and goes on to land on the moon.
Right.
But
Right.
the here's where Chazelle kind of hits for me. I know that. I'm a grown man. I've studied history. I'm aware of that. It's a common knowledge. In that moment watching this movie, I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, how is he gonna get through it? Like, that is the mark of greatness to me. When I know something and someone in a film, like making a film, can make me question something and like completely forget what I know, and I'm starting to think like I'm in the moment. Do you know what that's?
Oh no, that is a great signature of good storytelling. I mean, this is sort of off topic a little bit,
Sure.
but oftentimes the artists who I find I really enjoy are the writers and storytellers who I really enjoy. I will find out what the story they made is about first off, and just spoilers and all that shit.
Okay.
And if I find that I still really enjoy the story and like completely totally forget about the spoilers and all that.
Yeah.
To me, that's the signature of good storytelling, because ultimately the plot is just a vehicle for like those moments, right? And it's those
Sure.
moments that you're taking in, and that you're bringing in. So anyway, just to further kind of solidify your point.
Is that your low key way of telling me that you've already spoiled Scream for you before you've even watched it? Because I'll get mad if you've spoiled a mystery movie for yourself. That would be the exception.
No, I haven't yet. I haven't.
Please don't watch those movies bare and
I've still somehow maintained my virginity on Scream.
Please don't give in to your inner demons on that one and watch that not knowing anything, because it's more fun to try to guess and see if you can figure out who, and more importantly, why are the killers and this and that. That's the fun of the Scream movies. But anyway, back to Damien Chazelle. That's one of the best things about a filmmaker to me, is when they can draw me into a moment. And I remember, I hate musicals. I think we've talked about this before, but I hate musicals. I just can't do it. Very few exceptions to my musical thing. Willy Wonka is probably the closest I can get to a musical. And I can watch La La Land and I don't cringe. I enjoy it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not one of my favorite movies, but I can enjoy it. And more so than not, I enjoy Chazelle because his films follow classic structure, but they don't end the way that everyone thinks or expects them to, if that makes any sense. He's not necessarily subverting expectations. He's more so about carrying through on theme. So you think, you look at something like Scott Pilgrim, where the end of the movie, Scott ends up hooking up with Ramona and they live happily ever after deal. When everybody watching that is like, well, no, they're kind of bad for each other. He was an asshole, cheating, blah, blah, blah. She was kind of a wishy-washy and he shouldn't, and kind of like guarded herself through her ex-boyfriend. You know what I mean? Like, there was a whole lot of people that was like, oh, that shouldn't have been like that. And I know for a fact Edgar Wright didn't want that ending, but like the studio made him change it. But the point of the matter is, Damien Chazelle's movies don't follow that cookie cutter shit. They don't give in. They are what they are. The beauty of it is like they follow through on theme. Like La La Land is about jazz. It's about love. It's about it's got the musical thing or whatever. But overall, La La Land was about relationships and how people kind of come and go in your life, and you have to follow a passion, and if someone that you're trying to connect with doesn't relate to that passion, then chances are it probably won't work out, which is also something that is prevalent in Whiplash.
Okay.
Whiplash
makes me wonder if he himself has gone through that.
No,
personally.
I absolutely believe that he has had relationship troubles, because he strikes me as the type, just because I'm watching his movies and the main characters are almost always very dedicated to what it is they're interested in and this and that. And given that he reoccurs subject matter throughout his films, I'm guessing he's very similar. Like he's writing what he knows. But it works for me, even though I'm not that interested in jazz. Like, but I understand, you know what I mean? I relate to that character because I can understand tunnel vision, I guess, if that makes any sense. And that's something that he examines in his films, and I love it. I'm trying to think of anything else that I wanted to add about him, but I don't know. Do you have any questions, maybe? That'd be a good way to talk about this.
My big question now is, where can I find his movies?
I gave
like
you...
most readily available nowadays, I guess. Oh, I mean, La La Land, I'm pretty sure I could probably find on Netflix, and I've seen bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
And I having only seen bits and pieces of it, and this will actually be something that will make me feel or make me figure out whether or not I'm going to watch this movie sooner or later. Is that movie more visually told?
Which movie?
La La Land. Is it like a heavily visually told movie?
Kinda. The visuals are definitely a point. I mean, the musical, they've got a lot of moving camera work and all that kind of stuff. So, choreography and all that kind of jazz.
Okay.
You have access to my Movies Anywhere account, remember? From Whiplash is definitely on there. I'm looking at that right now. And
that sounds like the one that I'm like... And
so is First Man.
Yeah.
So both of those movies are at your disposal should you feel the need to do them. I would strongly impress Whiplash most of all.
That one sounds like it's right up my alley because I really love movies about... I mean, for obvious reasons, I love movies about artists and the artist struggle and stuff like that.
It's a powerful film. Not in a where you like walk away and you go, whoa. But I will tell you one thing. The ending sequence of Whiplash will make you go, oh, it's over? No! Like, keep going. Like, I could watch this for years. I remember the first time I watched it, I legitimately went, no, that can't be the end. What has it been, like 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Like,
which was the first Damien Chazelle movie that you watched?
Whiplash. It was Whiplash.
Oh, okay. It was Whiplash. All right. Okay.
He had made a short film for Whiplash. And it was just solely based off. He had J.K. Simmons. I don't know how he pulled that off, but he had J.K. Simmons, and I don't think he had Miles Teller. I think he had someone else in the lead role of Andrew. But Jason Blum, the acclaimed horror producer, Blumhouse, saw it and was like, "Yeah, we need to make. Do you have like a feature?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so they made a feature from it.
That's awesome.
And that's just kind of how he went from there.
Yeah, that's interesting that I haven't heard about this guy, even though he's clearly made a bunch of movies that have really like registered. You know what I mean? Like I've heard of all these movies, but I never hear the director associated with any of them.
Right.
Which is that to myself, that to me is interesting because like I said, they're all kind of
notable
hits,
films,
basically.
Yeah. Even after like you look at somebody like Christopher Nolan, immediately after they made Memento. They were marketing the shit out of him as from Christopher Nolan, the director of Memento. You know what I mean? Like, they are not. I don't know why they don't market Damien Chazelle that much. He's done a little bit of writing work for other films. Like I know he did. The worst thing on his IMDb that I can find, I haven't seen 10 Cloverfield Lane. I don't know if you have or not. That's the one with John. That's the one with John Goodman, and they're in the bunker and stuff.
I watched like 5 minutes of it. My sister had put it on.
Okay.
I
don't know if it's. I don't know if it's good or not. I can't say.
Yeah.
He did write The Last Exorcism Part 2, and that was one of the worst horror sequels I've ever seen. And I say that because I really enjoyed The Last Exorcism Part 1, and given the rest of his body of work, I'm inclined to believe there was some fuckery that went on there with his script, or just someone dropped the ball with direction. You know what I mean? Like, I'm giving him the pass on that. Or maybe just horror's not in his wheelhouse, because the rest of the films that I've seen him do don't really have any kind of horrific elements in them. There's intense things, like Whiplash gets really intense a couple times, but nothing really like tense or horrific. So it could just be his wheelhouse. But other than that, it's banger after banger, and he's only got 3 films. Like, and so I'm always
even out of his bangers, would you have any sort of feedback on like what it is that if he has anything that he's not like
Not good at?
not hitting quite that well, or a weakness, I guess I would say. Because you've talked about his strengths, but like what does he have any particular weaknesses in his?
I want to say,
chops?
well, I want to say that despite the fact that I championed him for having running themes in his work, and all artists do, I feel like in his next work, or even right now in his next work, I already know it's set in Hollywood, so it immediately ties to the La La Land. I feel like he's banging on the same drum a couple, like a little too much. Like he's got to show some versatility, maybe.
Yeah, he might be overplaying it.
Yeah, and I don't knock him for doing what he loves. I absolutely, I appreciate the fact that he's infusing jazz almost into every movie that he does and all that kind of stuff. But there comes a point when you're like, wow, I really love your work, but I would love to see you do something else.
Sure. Well, I mean, jazz is very broad in the set of emotions that it can cover, and also like the timelines that you can cover to a certain extent, you know? I mean, it's all going to be modern, but, there's a lot of modernity to cover. So I definitely, it does sound like that's like a signature he's adopted, and like that's what he's going to keep going with. I'm sure at some point, right? Because it happens for every artist where they just burn out, or somebody talks to them and is like, hey, can we just like do something fucking else?
Yeah. Yeah. That's where I think maybe he's being held back from being a household name, is because I don't know if people just don't have confidence in him to pull off something he's not already known for. It's kind of like an actor on a TV show getting typecast. You know what I mean? So like if they did something, like if they were saying, hey, we're going to remake The Jazz Singer, immediately I could see a studio head go, oh, we should get Damien Chazelle to do that. Where it's like, yeah that's an obvious low-hanging fruit pick. He would probably knock it out of the park. But like no one's going to be like, oh, wow, I didn't realize it. He's not going to Heath Ledger anybody with that. It's not going to take people by surprise, which taking people by surprise is how you get noticed. You know what I mean? So if he came through and he made something outside of this, if he made something like a Scott Pilgrim that was crazy stylized, that might be something out of his wheelhouse. Like, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Same thing. It's like a Christopher Nolan critique, where everything Christopher Nolan is so grounded and gritty and quote unquote like based in like an elevated reality. It's like, oh, that's your signature style. Do you have any other flavors?
Yeah.
I drink Coca-Cola a lot, but every now and then I want a Sprite. Like,
yeah.
So that would be my critique, is that I think he's got to challenge himself.
Yeah.
I think he's established that he's very capable of doing a lot of things, especially things that he's interested in. And I'm not saying an artist shouldn't do things that they're not interested in, but I feel like he should take on a challenge.
That is an issue that I think, I don't know, would you call him like in the auteur field of writer-director?
Yes.
I feel like that's an issue that comes not just within film, but like any kind of storytelling that can come up for a lot of artists, for where, they basically have the controls over the whole thing, is sometimes they can get caught in like little ruts, basically. I mean, originally I was gonna talk about one artist as my first introductory artist, but I'm gonna switch it up.
Okay.
Because I wanted to go with sort of the topic that we're leading with right now. So like, for my first dude, or my first artist, it's Sean Gordon Murphy, an artist who I've followed for a long time. I heard about him originally, probably from Joker. I'm pretty
seeing
sure
Batman the Animated Series on his Instagram, so
I'm pretty sure he was the one who recommended him to me as an artist. But I mean, also his name got passed around in the sequential art department a lot because he graduated from SCAD.
Oh, did he?
He had graduated maybe a couple years before, I got in, and he was probably one of those people who went through the program and just like right out the door, started getting jobs. I'm pretty sure he had started getting jobs while he was still
Wow.
like in the middle of the program at SCAD. He's a very talented artist, and he was
Yeah.
talented even in school. So the first book that I read by him was published by Oni Press, and it's called Off Road, and it's basically a slice of life story, which at the time that was kind of the thing that Oni was they were capitalizing on. So like they had stories like Off Road, they had Scott Pilgrim obviously, and a bunch of other stories that were always boiled down to like being very much about a particular person's life and just going really in depth into character study stuff. So like
Okay.
Off Road is about this guy and his friends, they get they're taking like I think it's like his dad's Jeep out for a ride, and it ends up like something happens to the Jeep, they have to fix it. It gets breaks down or something, and it's really about like his relationship with his friends. It's a very simple story, but the way that he tells the story, especially for somebody who just fucking got out of art school,
Yeah.
it's great. Like it's a great read. I highly recommend it to everybody. Um, that particular book is done entirely in black and white, and I think he uses some like zipatone or like manga tones for like adding additional depth, if I remember it correctly. For a long time, as an artist, Sean Gordon Murphy did almost exclusively black and white books.
Yeah.
And then I want to say around I'm trying to remember which story it was that he got on. The colorist that came on board to work with him, and I think this is when he started getting work with like mainstream comics. Was the artist who started working with him was Matt Hollingsworth. I think I might be getting some things mixed up, but I know like the first like mainstream comics run I read that he did was Hellblazer, and I think Matt Hollingsworth worked with him on Hellblazer. I could be wrong about that. So that's like the character of John Constantine. Here's the thing. There are artists who I follow in comics exclusively because I like their artwork, and so like as somebody who draws and inks, I'm always paying like I will pick up artists and just ignore the words, which sorry writers, but like I'll ignore the words and just pay attention to the art because I'm trying to take apart like what the process
Absolutely.
is, what it is that they're doing in terms of design. So like the best way that I can properly describe Sean Gordon Murphy's like style, the way that he draws, the way that he composes, heavy contrast, but
Yeah.
he does an incredible amount of detailed work. So like he's very particular about paying attention to like architecture, to buildings, to tech. He loves to draw tech, so he'll pick up stories. What are you gonna say, John?
I'm looking at a picture of Dick Grayson on the Gotham SWAT team or whatever that's on his Instagram, and like you said, high contrast, black and white. But he has he's wearing a bulletproof vest, but he's also got like a hood on, like a hooded, not a hooded sweater, but like a high collar sweater.
Yeah, yeah.
And the what's the part around your neck? What is that called?
The
collar. The collar.
The collar, yes.
The collar is like a zip up collar, and he has like the little tiny like rivets for the zipper on the on the collar, like detailed out, which is crazy.
No, the amount of detail that he puts into his work is just, it's wild. Like there's a couple of other artists that I can think of that are on that level. And here's the thing is like you can fuck up doing all that detail too. There are a lot of artists who work highly detailed and they don't, like, it doesn't look great. He makes it look really great because his abilities are in such a way that he's always consistent and he's thinking very intentionally about what detail to include. So like he's very meticulous, but all the details that he's meticulous about are clearly important to establishing and grounding like the level of reality in his stories. So like I will say right now, I haven't read his Batman work, and knowing I do know this much is that he's both writer and artist for the Batman stories.
Wow.
So that that was actually part of the reason. It was part of the reason why I haven't touched them yet, because before that I had read one of his. He had done through an imprint of DC called Vertigo. He had done a creator-owned title called Punk Rock Jesus. I was pretty excited about it because, like, I love his art, I love his work. I think I wanted to see, you know, I really liked Off-Road, and I was like, well, he's got some pretty good chops, you know, as an auteur type artist, at least from that book. So let's give it a try. You know, as per usual, the artwork was great in Punk Rock Jesus, but the story was not good at all. Like, it was just a very confusing mess in which he was trying to, like, work through some feelings, his, like, feelings towards religion, and, like, he's a very, like, vocal atheist, you know, and somewhat vocal about politics stuff. And so that clearly, like,
bled over.
Yeah, bled over into the story in such a way where I was just like, I don't really know what your point is at the like at the end of the story. Like, if he was trying to like have some kind of criticism about religion, I don't know what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
If he was supposed to have some kind of criticism about society, I don't know what it was supposed to be. I mean, the basic plot of Punk Rock Jesus is like, there's a reality TV show where like scientists are basically like impregnating a woman with the clone of Jesus.
Okay.
And I don't even remember why this is entirely, but like it's kind of like the Truman Show a little bit, plus, you know, I don't know, some other story that I can't remember where they cloned somebody. But anyway, you know, like
I don't think they cloned Truman though.
No, they didn't.
Okay, okay. I just want to make sure we were on the same page.
But I'm saying the Truman Show in terms of the reality TV show.
Okay.
Where it's like this person's basically born into the reality TV show. But anyway, the main character, who is this clone of Jesus, basically like in his own way reenacts like this martyrdom storyline, but as an atheist, basically. Okay. So I know it's like one of those things where it's like I kind of get what you're going with, and I kind of don't get what you're going with.
Yeah.
And it ultimately felt preachy. So like it wasn't a strong title, in my opinion. Artwork was great. Once again, that's his strength. He clearly loves to draw. He's really fucking good at it. And I love to see all the stuff that he does draw. I will say, as a slight criticism in terms of his drawing, he probably pays way more attention to the environment and to the objects than he does like in terms of character design. A lot of his characters kind of feel a little bit, not necessarily cookie cutter, but they're not super, I don't think he's thinking super deeply in terms of like body types and stuff like that. They all kind of come off the same. I can see some characters where I've seen, you know, where it's like, oh, I've seen you draw this character type for a totally other character. He's not going outside of his comfort zone, I think.
Yeah. He's got like a template that he follows.
Yeah. And like I said, I think that's because he does get really fixated on drawing like a lot of the environmental stuff. I will say a title that I would highly recommend that he's worked on, and I say worked on because he worked with a writer on this one, is called Jow the Barbarian. And the writer he's working with on that one is Grant Morrison, who is he's on my top tier of comics writers. So like him, Neil Gaiman, Al Moore, they're all sort of like up there in terms of like Western comics of writers who I really appreciate. And Jow the Barbarian is a story that basically it's the never-ending story, but it's like a more grounded version of it where like the main character is basically having a medically induced hallucination, and during this hallucination he's off in this fantasy world. And so There's other elements of the plot that get played into it. I'm not going to go into, but that's the basic premise of it. And the way that it's done, both writer and artist on the team are having a shit ton of fun. This is it's a book that's also in color. And I highly recommend it. It's another Vertigo imprint comic. You should be able to find it pretty easily. I think that pretty much covers Sean Gordon Murphy for me. Do you have any questions in regards to that, or you want to move on to the next?
Have you heard anything? I'm looking at his Instagram, and it looks like, and this is right up my alley, because, I mean, we know that I love Batman, but it looks like he did a one-off Mr. Freeze comic book called Von Freeze. Do you know anything about this?
So, I don't know a whole lot, but basically, as far as I'm aware, it is within the same like context of his other more popular book, Batman White Knight. So like when he does his writer artist thing for the Batman stories, it's usually as like, this is a alternate kind of timeline thing.
Okay.
So like White Knight, as far as I'm aware, is a story that basically looks at Batman as the villain and the Joker as the Joker. In this story, the Joker is like is reformed from his life of crime, and is basically putting Batman on trial for like, oh, you're causing all these problems, basically.
Wow. And
so I don't know this entirely, but I'm assuming that the Freeze storyline is kind of similarly from Freeze's perspective.
Yeah.
He really likes Mr. Freeze as a villain. And so I think this is basically on just notes that I've read and stuff on Twitter, It's definitely like the book is more aimed towards people who like the Freeze character.
That's amazing.
So he's more focused on Freeze than on Batman. So you might really enjoy it.
I wouldn't say I like Freeze more than I like Batman, but I like Freeze, so
yeah.
I'm all in. Like Joker recommended it to me, and I fell in love with it. What the hell is that? Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, where it's all Lex's point of view. That's one of my favorite graphic novels of all time. Like it got a permanent spot on my shelf, and I think I revisit it maybe once a year. Which you keep in mind for me. That's a lot of comic reading. Like I don't read comics. I'm not a sit down and read comics kind of guy all that much. Like I have in the past, but like I just don't have time these days.
No, I mean it's funny though. After talking about all this, I am probably going to pick up some Sean Gordon Murphy books because I have some catching up to do.
That's fair.
I will say as another note, I may have already said this, but I really like the colorist that he does work with on a lot of these books. Matt Hollingsworth is an incredibly good colorist who is economical in the way that he's doing his coloring, and by that I mean he's not necessarily doing a lot of painterly tricks in the sense of he's, doing all these elaborate reflections or like or lighting type tricks. He's just like, the way I would describe it is his process seems like he's just picking the flat colors and then elaborating on the flat colors in a way that I'm pretty sure he's just overlaying it with like like some kind of watercolor texture. I really, as somebody who's worked as a colorist in comics in the past, I mean, still do, but I have a lot of appreciation for colorists who can break down that process and maximize it, because the job of a colorist oftentimes is to elaborate and make more beautiful, like the liner. And the person that he's working with, in my opinion, like he's working with one of the best line artists in current like mainstream comics.
Wow.
So
awesome.
Anyway, that's my breakdown of Sean Gordon Murphy. You want to move on to
sure
your next artist?
This is gonna be kind of an off the wall pick.
I like it though.
His name is Maxwell Jacob Freeman, otherwise known as MJF in All Elite Wrestling. Now, I want to acknowledge here that professional wrestlers are both athletes and artists. You have to
For
be.
sure.
It's predetermined how it works out, but there's a lot of physicality involved, and so there is a athletic component to it. But I'm here to examine more of the artistic thing of it, which when it doesn't matter if you're a pro wrestler or a Hollywood actor. When you're hired to play the bad guy, you got to play the bad guy, right? Like that's the job.
Yep.
In professional wrestling, for the last decade or two, there really hasn't been a bad guy who did the job correctly. So let me inform you, because I know you're not the most informed on professional wrestling, or at least current professional wrestling.
Yeah.
For the longest time, the only game in town was WWE, formerly known as WWF, which is controlled by Vince McMahon, and the buck stops with him. He comes up with all the gimmicks, the angles, all the booking, all of the, who wins, who loses, how it happens, yada yada yada. The wrestlers get to kind of fill in some of the blanks, but even then they have to run a lot of the stuff by him. There's rules. There's stupid rules of what they can and cannot do. And for the longest time, most of the guys who were angled to be the heel is the bad guy, are cheered by the audience, which is not what a heel is supposed to do. And the reason for that is they are so good at being heels that the smart fans who are aware of how it works appreciate it and will cheer them. Does that make sense? Like, you're good at your job, and I'm thankful that you're doing what your job. So the crowds like them naturally. Like, there's no hatred on them. The only wrestlers that people hated were usually good guys who didn't do the job well, or bad guys who didn't do the job well. Most of the good wrestlers want to be heels. Like, you hear a lot of actors talk about they want to be, the villain in a Marvel movie. They don't want to be Spider-Man. They want to be Doc Ock. They want, you know what I mean? Like, that's the more interesting character to them. A lot of the good people do it. So for the longest time, all the bad guys got cheered. And it was kind of an ironic thing. And in wrestling, the kind of mantra is, it doesn't matter if they're cheering you or booing you, as long as they're reacting to you, you're doing something right. Then another wrestling promotion came along called All Elite Wrestling, AEW. And right from the very start, when I started watching it, because, I'm interested, I wanted to give it a shot and see what it was, I could tell this guy was something else. He walked out with a microphone the first night that I watched him, and he was the only wrestler in decades that I have seen that he did the heel so well that the crowd booed him for being so good. They legitimately hate this man, and it's because he's doing the job much better than anyone else has ever in the last 20 years. The beauty of it, not only is he so good at his job, but this is the reason why I like him. I am a sucker for the quote-unquote classical way. And I don't mean that for professional wrestling. I mean that in everything. I like classic horror. I like classic action. I like classic Coke. Classic. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, a lot of people try to put their own spin on things and, change things and make it fresh and all of that. No. I like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Do it the way it's always been done. I enjoy that. Maybe that's the conservative side of me that's just like, no, I don't like change, blah, blah, blah. But I appreciate when someone can pull off classic well. So MJF's character is classic heel. He does all the heel things. He comes out, he disparages the local football team. He says that the women in this city are ugly. You know what I mean? Like, he goes through those motions. Now, since I want to say the late 80s, maybe mid 90s or whatever, it became clear that professional wrestling was predetermined. Like, it wasn't like you know what I mean? Like the people aren't really, the Undertaker. He's not an undead living human being. He's a guy named Mark Calloway who just plays the Undertaker. So a lot of wrestlers, and when I say a lot, I mean almost 95% of them, if not 99, don't embody their character when the cameras are off. Like, they're just Joe Schmo. Like, oh, in the wrestling ring, my name's Adrenaline. And, here having this interview, my name's Andrew.
Yeah.
MJF does not drop character. So if you have an interview with him, he's being a dick to you the entire time. If you see him on the street and ask for his autograph, he'll flip you off and tell you to go kill yourself. Like, he lives it 24/7.
He's committing to the bit.
Yes. And I love it because it gives me new stuff with him 24/7. You watch an interview with him, he's making fun of the interviewer. He's like, oh no, what? Because you're fat and your wife doesn't love you. Like, he embodies the character so well. And I appreciate the fact that he's doing that classic wrestling gimmick of never break character in public. You know what I mean? Because it adds a level, like I know we just talked about when fandom goes too far and people get too far into it. But I love the fact that I can be immersed in the professional wrestling world where he's a character 24/7 outside of the. So you know what I mean? Like, it never breaks the illusion when I'm watching the programming that he is a dick. He is a stuck up trust fund boy, with an arrogant ego who, just can't stop cheating and talking shit about people and this and that. And I feel like that's what makes him so great, is that he embodies a classical approach to something that's gotten forgotten by so many people looking to innovate. Like, innovation's great. I don't hate innovation. It's necessary. It's contributed so much to our livelihood, but it's so stale that because everybody's trying to do it. So I appreciate an artist who can go to the classic realm and bring it back, and not necessarily make it fresh, but inject it into an opportunity to stand out. And that really is something that I enjoy.
So in regards to MJF, is there any weaknesses you would say to his? Because it sounds like you really like this guy as a heel.
His wrestling. I've watched him. I mean, don't get me wrong. He does what he has to do in the ring. He's competent in the ring. He knows what he's doing. He's not like hurting people. He's not reckless or anything like that. He's very. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's well trained. He knows how to pull spots and do all this. And to some extent, he knows how to sell the character in the match. A lot of wrestlers don't do that. They are the character when they're on the microphone, but then when they're in the ring, they're just a guy wrestling. Whereas some wrestlers will still live the character while they're wrestling. And it's hard to understand that if you don't really watch, but when you see it, you know it. Like, somebody will stay in character while they're doing every move, while they're faking every reaction to taking a move. He's good at that stuff. Like, don't get me wrong. But in terms of, I don't want to say athleticism, but I want to say athleticism. In terms of, like, the wow factor of, like, good moves and stuff like, so when you're in a wrestling match, there's a storytelling component. He can react in character. He can act and react in character just fine during the match. He can pull off moves just fine. But in terms of structuring a match, like as a story, which is what you should do, I don't feel like he has that yet. I feel like he's very much lacking in that. Like, it's just, oh, okay, now the match has started. Now I can kind of go back to my phone and, scroll around and check Instagram and Facebook or whatever like that. Like, I really don't have to pay attention to the stuff that he's going to do. Where there's other wrestlers where I'm watching, their promos are terrible, their characters, maybe I like them, maybe I don't. But when they're in the ring, I'm like, oh, I got to watch this guy. He's magic. I never know what spot he's going to do. I never know what move he's going to do. He's usually taking a chance. Like, even the female wrestlers, like, they do the same stuff. Like, I watch them in the ring. They're just fantastic at what they do. MJF, I don't think has that. I don't know if he thinks he doesn't need it. If that makes any sense. Like if he was like, a part of me questions whether or not he restrains that, because if he was good in the ring, it would almost like it would fall into how I talked about how other wrestlers were so good at being bad guys that got cheered. I feel like if he was that great in the ring and he showed off in the ring, he might be afraid that they'll start cheering him no matter how dastardly evil he is and stuff like that. So I don't know if he's holding back or if he just doesn't have that gear or what. But that would be my only critique of him as a professional wrestler.
All right. Cool. So Jow, we're getting on the hour, so I'm thinking maybe because originally we were going to do 3.
Yeah.
But looking at our time, maybe I'll kind of run through my last current favorite, even though there's another artist who I'd love to talk about, but we can talk about him. We can definitely talk about it another time.
Okay.
So I will talk about Twitch streamer, Forgotten VCR. So
okay.
I don't even remember how I came across this Twitch channel. This was one of those things where about maybe a year and a half ago, I started a Twitch account originally because I was gonna like stream myself working on there, and I haven't been really doing that. And I might pick it up again at some point in the future. But what I ended up doing is just like surfing around Twitch to see what kind of streams were going on, and I know that I was high the night that I came across this. I came across this channel where and it works very well if you're high, by the way, where basically like the best way I could describe it is a mixtape of old like 70s, 80s, 90s movies, but the majority of them are like foreign films. So like sometimes they're German, sometimes they're like Thai, Southeast Asian movies, Japanese movies, like all like foreign movies that get domesticated, usually almost entirely through VHS. So like learning a little bit about this guy, the enigmatic Forgotten VCR. He basically has a giant treasure trove of these VHSs, and so he basically decided like, oh, okay, I'm gonna make these mixtapes of like some of my favorite moments from these movies. So he'll pick out moments from these movies and then like stitch them together, not necessarily as a story, but more as like a mixtape where it's like they kind of thematically connect, but also over time while making these mixtapes, he's basically like kind of created memes out of like certain characters from certain stories. So like there's a particular actor that recurs in these films, sometimes directed by Joseph Wise, sometimes they just end up kind of all over the place because a lot of these older movies, directors would just take footage from one other movie and like stitch them together, a la like Power Rangers, you know. But there's this one actor, this one mustachioed actor who turns out in a lot of these like these ninja films. And in these particular ninja films, these are ninjas who wear like bright yellow and purple outfits with like a logo emblazoned on their headband that just says ninja, you know, in case you weren't sure. These are incredibly cheesy films. These are incredibly like poorly made films, a lot of them. But he manages to find Forgotten VCR manages to find all these particular choice moments from them that it brings out a certain appreciation of like these shitty movies. And what the other thing that he does is there's sort of like a format to where it opens with an intro. The intro always stays the same, and there's always particular moments in the mixtape that you kind of return to, like certain songs that will come up every single mixtape, and also a particular scene that the Twitch community calls like the national anthem. And this particular scene is like from one of those ninja movies, and it's two ninjas running up this hill, and they're like, carrying their sword or banner, and they get to the top of the hill, and when they get to the top of the hill, they yell ninja, and then everybody in the chat, types out ninja, and so it's very Rocky Horror Picture Show-esque, where it's like you have these call and response moments to certain memes that will pop up during the mixtape, and they always happen fairly routinely. And so my favorite thing about this stream is that community that forms over time, because it is very much, that's my closest comparison I can make it to, is like either like watching The Room in a theater or watching Rocky Horror Picture Show in a theater, where there's these moments where everybody in the audience knows, like, hey, this is how you respond.
Yeah.
And so it creates this communal moment. Like, if you're not into that particular kind of genre of film, or if it's just like you watch and you're like, I can't do this, it's not going to be for you. Like, it's a very acquired taste, but it is also, like, I would say easily, because there are a lot of Twitch streams that, like, every night they post, or very frequently they post. Forgotten VCR is about, let's say, 3 times a week. And when it pops up, I'm like, I gotta watch it. I gotta show up and see what's gonna happen.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
When did you start watching?
This was in I think summer of 2020, maybe.
Okay. There's a very interesting aspect that I want to bring up here. You're talking about the how it engages and creates a communal atmosphere, and that's obviously something that appealed to you. In the last year, in like late May 2020, or it was like April, May, March, somewhere in there of 2020, was watching The Last Drive-In, which is with Joe Bob Briggs, where he hosts movies and all that, and they have a live thing or whatever, and it's a communal experience on Twitter, where, kind of like how you were talking about the call and response thing from Rocky Horror, it's kind of the same thing when we're watching these shitty B movies, when something crazy happens, like, that has nothing to do with the main plot or anything. It wasn't set up, it's just a random thing. Everyone on Twitter reacts the same, and then all of a sudden, like, it becomes a communal experience. And I'm obviously, with COVID and the shutdowns that were happening last year, for both of us to kind of find communal experience, I don't want to say oriented art, but it birthed communal experience online, which is weird.
And I have to say, I feel like there is an art to that communal organization, in the sense of, like, you have to be able to arrange an aesthetic that you're consistent on.
Yep.
And then also, like, be able to acknowledge and also engage what your audience is saying in terms of feedback.
Yeah.
And then also the next part of that, like the creative part of that, is to, like, respond in such a way that matches, like, your general creative output, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had the opportunity yet to, like, participate in The Last Drive-In, but I'm going to assume, like, there are certain, like, inner narratives or ideas within the community or memes or whatever that are kind of like, if somebody said it to you, you would know,
Yeah.
Like your inside jokes and stuff like that.
There are definitely some, a linear storytelling that's kind of, pops up every now and then. Like, Joe Bob's got his thing, and his male girl is kind of his foil, and there's a goofy set director guy who spray paints awards, and there's like little things that do that are fun little callbacks that happen here and there. But for the most part, it's still schlocky B movies, and some of the best interviews. I've watched movies sometimes when he gives interviews, and like to the filmmakers, and I don't want to go back to the movie because the interview is so good. It's really crazy to watch that, but that's off topic. We could talk about Joe Bob another day.
Well, no, I mean, that's the other. I mean, it is off topic in the sense of there are no interviews with Forgotten VCR, but that is definitely its own art form too.
Sure,
for sure. Trying to figure out how to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, definitely with Forgotten VCR, it is like the community involved with it. It is the the interesting choices he'll make for the mixtapes, because sometimes mixtapes where it's music, like, and he'll pick out particular music to go with like fight scenes. So like he'll take out whatever original sound effects or music were in that fight scene and overlay it with like maybe either a more modern track or some other track he found where it's like, oh, this would go well together.
Yeah.
And so he ends up like kind of making these impromptu like music videos out of it. And I find that, I mean, that's really cool. It's like we've talked in the past about like the art of editing, and this is Forgotten VCR is like entirely that. It's entirely just like putting things together, finding things that you wouldn't think go together, and they turn out to go together incredibly well. So, yeah, that's my that is my
that'll round it out. So we each got 2 in, and that'll make a total of 4 for our listening audience to check out if they haven't. I actually am very intrigued in this. I was trying to get into Twitch a couple weeks ago when I was going to do Haunted Home Theater. I was going to do it as a simultaneous a Twitch feed and as a YouTube feed and see how that worked out. But unfortunately, I have been booked on many upcoming gigs, so I do not have the time to continue Haunted Home Theater. But I do plan on bringing it back at some point, better than ever. But the bright side is that I'm making money that's going to go into Haunted. So I can't. Awesome. That's my number one priority right now. Yeah. So doing the gigs is without question. All right, so I'm going to throw out. We're at our hour mark, but we usually go 1:10. So I'm going to throw out a question to you that you were probably not prepared for, Mr. Rainwater.
All right.
What are you currently seeking? Like, is there an artist type or an artist that you're looking for right now? Like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm not necessarily looking for an artist, but I'm looking for a type of art at times just to kind of fill like an empty void in my experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I was attracted to the direct Damien Chazelle earlier because I'm always looking for auteurs. I'm always looking for people for whom they are so entrenched into the process that inevitably I get interested in finding out more about that person.
Yeah.
That's definitely one. Another would probably be like an artist type. I'm always looking for, I was going to say innovators, like people are trying to do new things. And I think that's why I started getting into Twitch, was because like Twitch seemed like this area where people were doing kind of new things with art in regards to like community interaction.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily new, but
it's growing. It's definitely not prevalent. Like YouTube is just, hey, we watch a video, you share the video, whatever. But this is like interactive video.
The environment of a stream, it creates a different kind of like, what's the word? Like it creates a different kind of ecology. Like because it's no longer like an artist doesn't just show up and does whatever they're gonna do and then nothing. It's now like there is the expectation that the audience and artists are in on this together.
Yeah.
So like, there are a lot of Twitch. I've watched a couple of I've watched a couple of Twitch streams where the whole premise of the stream is that the streamer is playing a character. So like, for instance, there's this character called Pastor Dave, and I can't remember what the name of it. I think his Twitch might still be called Bible Boys Church. I'm not actually sure if it's still called that, but basically, this guy is playing the character of like this conservative, like Bible thumping preacher. And over the course of like watching it over like maybe 10 minutes, you start to figure out like, oh, this is like satire or parody or something, because then you look at the commenters on the stream and they're like harassing him, and his whole thing is like just feeding off of the harassment and going on with that, and it almost becomes like a pro wrestling thing.
Okay.
Where it's like his whole thing is about reacting to the audience and playing on the narratives that they're building for him.
And he's being ridiculous because no matter what they say, he's finding a way to make it evil in the act of the devil.
Like, there was this entire, like, month of, like, where the narrative was, like, they were accusing him of being, like, erotically attracted to ducks. So, like, all of the humor, like, all of the jokes that they were lobbing at him was, like, you know, like, about, you know, how he's looking to, like, get it on with a duck, basically.
What was the name of this channel again? Because this I'm feeling compelled to check out.
I need to make sure that it's still called this. At the time, it was called Bible Boys Church. And for some reason, I'm of the opinion that they changed the name of the stream.
I feel like if I Google searched it, though, I'd still be able to deduce what the end result was.
Okay. No, it's still called Bible Boys Church.
Perfect. I'm going to be checking that out without a doubt.
But it's hilarious. I haven't watched it in a while, but like every chat, there's at least a good 30 to 45 minutes where I'm like glued in because there's some hilarious bullshit going on.
I wanted to recommend something to you too, and I know I've already given you like several movies to watch, but I feel like I need to impress upon you because you're gonna be so happy once you've finished watching this. It's gonna be. I feel like it's going to be one of your favorite movies of all time. I know I've brought it up before, but I don't know if I've stressed it as hard. There's a movie called Fried Berry. I
haven't heard about this movie.
Oh, Rainwater, you are going to be so happy when you watch this movie. First of all, like how you said before about watching the VCR thing where being high helps. Being high is almost a requirement to watch this movie. It's a very surrealist kind of movie. I don't want to call it schlocky because it's not. It's very artsy in a way. But it's the way I could surmise it is in a log line is that an alien takes a joyride in a homeless drug addict's body around town. And that's basically it. So it's a guy who doesn't. I don't believe he speaks the entire movie or whatever. But it's basically an alien silently walking around in this guy's body, like interacting like with a strip club and like random stuff. But it's not like schlocky comedy or like wacky comedy. It's just very artsy comedy. And I think you might be able to like buy it on Vudu, but I think the only way you can stream it is on Shudder. I think it was like stuck on there. But if you were looking to get in the Last Drive-In, that's where you'd have to go.
Yeah, that's something that's on my mind too, because I do want to, thinking about how much I enjoy the communal experience with Forgotten VCR. More is better, basically.
The only downside about the Last Drive-In is that they're off season right now. I don't know when they start up. I think they're gonna have a Christmas special coming up. They usually do, but it's a good time. But anyway, Fried Berry is a movie that I want you to. We could spend an entire podcast probably talking about it, and I'm not even kidding. It's a South African movie too. It's so like if you know anything about some of the South African stuff that's come out. It's out there, but I'm pretty sure if I reached out to Ryan Kruger, who is the director, he would probably even come on the podcast and talk with us about it. Like he's down to earth, cool like that. But it's a movie that I'm strongly impressing upon you before Scream, before Whiplash, before all that kind of stuff. I really need you to watch Fried Berry because I feel like it's going to be the movie that you'll obsess over for years. I watched it and I immediately thought this is a Rainwater film. All right, so we're wrapping up now. We're coming up on an hour and 10 minutes. Thank you guys for checking out this particular episode. I hope we've brought some stuff to light for you guys to check out. And we didn't get to my last artist. I'm gonna name drop him anyway. His name's Guga. He's a home cook who's got a YouTube channel.
I just subscribed to him too because I'm gonna check it out.
In a nutshell, one of my favorite things about artists is that they're always experimenting. Right? That's one of the things. Like you have a brain thought and you just say, "Oh fuck it, let's see what works." This guy is constantly experimenting with how he prepares food. He dry ages things in honey. He will deep fried chicken in like beef fat, bacon fat, duck fat, and he'll figure out which one tastes the best.
Oh, nice.
Like,
Yeah.
almost every one of his videos is like some crazy weird ass experiment. And I love the innovation of it. He's a really cool guy. It's a lot of beef, so if you're a vegan, please don't tune in. But anyway, the point of it is this episode, I wanted us to recommend stuff because I know artists are usually craving good recommendations. I don't know why we didn't have Joker on this episode. We probably should have.
This is an idea that I'm sure we'll do more of in the future because it is fun to like. There's two things I like as an artist. It's talking about the process and then talking about people who do the process really well.
Yeah. With
people who understand what that means.
Right. And I wanted to bring some people to light for our audience of like 6 people. And I hope that we've done that tonight. So we will revisit this topic in the future, and we'll be smart enough to ask Joker to come back because Joker is that wild card who will pop in and throw out names.
He will drop something where I'm like, what?
No, and the thing I was going to say was he'll drop names that both of us will be like, I don't know who the fuck that is, but I'm definitely checking that out. And between me and you, we're both pretty well versed in, like, we're tapped in to like stuff that's popping. And Joker is the guy. Not to make that joke, but he's ahead of the curve. You know what I mean?
Is.
Just like the Joker says in Dark Knight, he's ahead of the curve. Our Joker is ahead of the curve. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys found some stuff to take away. Definitely check out some of the stuff Rainwater mentioned. Check out Damien Chazelle's body of work. I don't expect most people to tune into pro wrestling if they haven't already. You're either in or out. But MJF,
I'll probably be checking out some clips on YouTube though.
It's worth, just like Google like MJF's best promo or whatever like that, and maybe you'll find something worthwhile. Maybe we'll get you into wrestling, Rainwater. That'd be fun.
Shit.
Not that you don't have time to get into it, but it's a nice thing. Listen, it's a wonderful thing to get drunk on Wednesday nights and have a reason for it, just to watch a pro wrestling match and have a nice glass of rum. We also, I'm going to tell you this right now. For my birthday next year, we're doing the reverse recommendation of cocktails, where I'm going to have you, Joker, and J Bevs on, and I'm gonna have you guys try like 2 or 3 cocktails that I've either discovered or come up with, because I am actively sampling amongst a million things. I tried red wine for the first time last night. Nobody told me you're supposed to drink red wine at room temperature. So that was kind of disappointing when I ordered it to go with my pasta. I'm like, I need something cold here. What the fuck is this? Nobody talks about that. I had no idea. It's a
different experience.
Yeah. I also had a sip of white wine, which was chilled, and I actually preferred that better. I didn't think I would, but anyway, that's not this episode. We will talk to you guys next week. Take it easy. Goodbye.